today. We will try our hardest. So to get started, I guess this year particularly there's been a high incidence of Hendra virus around. A lot has happened in the last 3 months. Maybe I think Professor Cleary and Rick, if we could just get you maybe to give an overview of where we're at the moment. Yes. And so that people have got an idea of what's happened and where we're at now.
Yeah, sure, Sharon. It has been a big year this year for Hendra virus. We've had in Australia 17 spillover events, 9 of which have been in Queensland with 11 horse deaths, and 8 of those have occurred in New South Wales with 10 horse deaths. If you compare that to what's happened up to this year, where there are only 14 spillover events from 1994 to this year, so indeed it has been a big year this year. It's been spread from the further south. We've had it in Maxfield in New South Wales to as far north as Kuranda. And it's gone to Chinchilla this year, which is the furthest inland we've seen it. But most of the spillover events or the incidents have occurred around southeast Queensland in northern New South Wales. In Queensland, we've quarantined 18 properties as a result of the Hendra virus outbreak. We've tested over 100 of horses in relation to those. We've tested 31 dogs. One of which became positive for Hendra virus, and we've tested 2 cats. So you can see there's been a lot of activity. Fortunately, we haven't had any human cases this year, and Michael will carry on to that. And the quarantine properties are now, most of them are out of quarantine. We've only got 1 property now in quarantine, and we hope to remove that quarantine within the next 2 weeks. But I don't think we should be complacent about Hendra virus. Although we've had a spike of events, it's not necessarily, the risk is not necessarily over, that we still need to take precautions about Hendra virus. It could happen tomorrow, it could be happening here as we speak today. So the message is that we've had a lot of spikes, a lot of cases. We're getting over those, but the risk has not gone away.
Right, and Professor Cleary?
Thank you. I think this has been, from my perspective, a very good year from the health perspective, and I'll come and talk about that in a moment. But clearly Hendra virus is an emerging illness, and one that has a very high complication or mortality rate associated with it. All of the cases to date have been cases where flying foxes have been affected, and horses, which are what we call an amplification host, have been involved before there's been transmission to any person. And over the years we've had 7 people who've been infected with Hendra virus. So it's got a very low infectivity, and we know that this virus is one of the viruses that doesn't change on a regular basis, so it's a very stable virus. In terms of the positives, which I alluded to, I think that the industry has done a remarkable job in terms of putting in place the health prevention and promotion activities that's really seen no one this year having a high exposure. We've assessed something like 68 people on the properties that have been quarantined or affected, and none of those have had a high exposure this year, whereas in prior years there were certainly a number of people that had been rated as having a high exposure. The reason for that is I think people are becoming more aware of this illness. They're making sure that they're doing things like moving food and water from underneath the trees. They're actually being much more careful with their horses when they do become unwell, and I think the veterinary profession has taken significant steps forward in terms of their personal protection when they're treating or caring for sick horses. So from my perspective, that's been a real positive, and I would like to compliment the industry on the action that they've clearly taken, because this is quite a significant change. The second thing, and something I might only mention briefly, is that there's been work undertaken by the University of Queensland in developing an antibody against the virus, which can be used in certain circumstances. And again, that's been a remarkable body of work where we've got a very purified antibody that could be used in circumstances where people have had a high exposure and are at risk of developing an infection. There is a complicated process before that treatment is being considered, but the work that's been done by the university, I think, again, is quite remarkable.
Oh, certainly very promising indeed. All right, well, we'll get into the questions now from the public.